whichever part of the world you are logging in from. Thanks for joining in. Before we start the session, just some housekeeping rules. Please be muted during the entire course of the discussion for more immersive and I would say uninterrupted kind of, let's say, uh, thought processes. Second, any questions, any kind of a Q&A you have, there is a chat window. You can post your questions anytime during the conversation while the proceedings are on, and I will take it up with Sunil. Uh, just would like to introduce our speaker and a great leader today, Sunil David. Sunil is a veteran in the digital transformation, IoT, and exponential technology space. 26 years of experience. He's currently the regional director, IoT for Indian and ASEAN region at AT&T. And the great part about Sunil, and this is the second innings at AT&T, with the last inning being for 14 years. And Sunil, I picked it up from LinkedIn.
Thank
Uh,
you.
but the great part about Sunil is about the genres of digital transformation facets. Uh, he has an understanding in terms of specifically IoT connected devices, and this whole aspect about data talking to each other. And this is exactly what we will talk in today's webinar about how unlocking the IoT could actually lead to the growth and scalability potential for the enterprises. It's a very strategic kind of a narrative what we will bring for all our participants. Uh, the other facet about Sunil, and I will allow him after this introduction to talk about his profile. It's a very multi-dimensional kind of a profile, let me tell you, because Sunil, one, is extremely active in many of the industry consortia. He leads many of the regional forums and special initiatives at NASCOM, CII, FICCI as well. He's very, very passionate about IoT as a theme and has done multiple initiatives working India with even in the Indian kind of a, let's say, government sector as well. The other facet you will see about Sunil, if you look at his social media presence, is an extremely visible interface in many of the events, conferences, forums, and the range of themes and topics he covers is very fascinating. And one of the things which I think we will also leverage Sunil's knowledge would be in terms of how IoT is becoming more strategic today in the conversation within the boardrooms amongst the CXOs. And we'll take his perspectives about the applications and use cases. So thanks so much, Sunil, for joining CXO series forum. This is our 41st session, and great to have you as part of this. Let me start by asking you, Sunil, about throw some light about your profile. I honestly, I can't do justice in 2 3 minutes, but it will be good to kind of talk about your current role at AT&T, and also as part of, I would say, external initiatives. What are you helping CII and other industry consortia in terms of building the IoT kind of a knowledge within India?
Thank you, Samir, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the session. It's a pleasure to be here. As far as my role within AT&T is concerned, I took up this role about 4 years back after I came back here. And in my role, I work very closely with the enterprise sales team in AT&T to make sure that we are able to position our IoT solutions and capabilities to our enterprise customers. So in India and the ASEAN region, we are only playing in the B2B space. We are not in the B2C space at this point in time. So I work very closely with the sales team to make sure that we are able to position ourselves. And IoT being an ecosystem play, we need to make sure that we have the right set of partners, right? So the one partner, one vendor cannot do it all. So we got to have the right ecosystem. So I work a lot with the startups. I work with a lot with solution providers, especially in the hardware space, making sure that we have the right hardware for a use case, working with platform providers, guys who build applications which fit on the platform. So I work with an ecosystem of partners to make sure that we have the right solution that we can position to our clients. And of course, most importantly, I work a lot on the marketing initiatives of AT&T because not many know that AT&T does IoT in India. People perceive AT&T as a telecom service provider providing plain vanilla connectivity, but there's much more than us providing connectivity. IoT is a business which is growing for us, and hence I use opportunities forums where I talk about what AT&T is doing in the IoT space. that's as far as my role within AT&T is concerned. Now, as far as my industry affiliations are concerned, first thing which I want to share is about my role with IET. IET, Samir, as you would know, is the Institute of Engineering Technology. It's a UK-based engineering society, and they have a chapter in India. They've been here present for almost 15 years now. And when it started, the whole objective is to evangelize IoT adoption in India. So they constituted a panel called IET IoT panel, and under that they have various working groups: smart work, smart cities, smart manufacturing, smart healthcare. Now there is a working group called Digital Communications Working Group. I'm actually part of that Digital Communications Working Group, and there are other friends of mine who are also part of that, representing the telecom industry, because telecom plays a very important part in enabling the IoT infrastructure. Because no matter how good your devices are, how strong your platform is, if you do not have reliable and secure connectivity, your IoT solution will not work. So what we do is, as a group, we make sure that from a telecom readiness perspective, we are able to share our inputs. Some of those inputs are also shared with the government in terms of what India can do to make sure that the telecom readiness is there, the infrastructure is there to be able to enable IoT services in India. So I work very closely with IET on that front. I also work very closely with NASSCOM. So very recently, I've been inducted as an IoT tech guru within NASSCOM. And they have a very interesting initiative. It's called Women Wizards Rule Tech, W2RT in short.
Right,
and as per that initiative, what they wanted to do is to skill women in the digital skills, right? So they launched this program about 2 years back, and their objective is to skill as many women as possible in digital skills. So IoT, AI, cybersecurity, blockchain, all of these areas are where they want to skill women, and they conduct various kind of sessions. So they do webinars. They have technical sessions, virtual labs. Most of them are all virtual, and even though they would like to do a couple of face-to-face, but given the current situation, they cannot do that. But they get experts from the industry to talk to this women, do these webinars and all that, and also mentor women. So I've also been assigned as a mentor. So I also mentor a few women who are needing help in carving out a career in digital. So I work with NASSCOM on that. I'm also working with CII Tamil Nadu. So they again constituted a forum called the Chief Technology Officers Forum, and about 30 CTOs meet once a month, and we kind of discuss and debate about what's happening in the technology space. Sometimes we get external speakers to come and share use cases. Sometimes you get startups coming in and talking about solutions that they have built and all that. And after we finish these 10 sessions, we actually culminate it into one big industrial event, a full day event. This time, because of the current pandemic, we could not do it in a hotel. And incidentally, we're going to do it tomorrow, Samir. Tomorrow, we're going to have this session. It's a full day session. And I'll actually be moderating a session on customer-centered innovation, because customer experience is obviously going to be very important. So I work with CII on that. And one area which is totally not related to IoT, and that's in the area of diversity and inclusion. So I'm also part of the NASSCOM Diversity and Inclusion Council for Tamil Nadu. And there, what we're trying to do is to sensitize organizations about the need to build a diverse and inclusive workforce. So we do a number of programs. So one is on women's leadership. One is on generational diversity. There's a program that we had done before on how do you get the LGBTQ community into the workforce. So we do a number of programs. Basically, the objective is to make sure that organizations are more sensitive, more aware of the need to build a diverse workforce. So that's it, Samir. In terms of my profile, I can go on, but yeah.
Sure. No, I think that's quite impressive, Sunil, and a lot of, I would say, aspects in terms of what I heard is also some of these things. What you're trying to do is to also give it back to the society and the larger, I would say, industry for the well-being, because I think it's essential for all of us to realize that there is one facet of what we work for and what others are looking from us in terms of some knowledge intake. So great to hear that. So switching back and coming to the core, Sunil, and
Sure.
Hope to have a very engaging conversation in the next 45, 50 minutes or so. This is about what I call today an agenda which seemingly has become very pivotal, what I call digital transformation agenda. And it's been at the forefront not only today, but in the last few years, specifically with the COVID situation. It's become kind of a, let's say, more, I would say, in the fulcrum of the news and very much in the limelight. But one of the facet over there of digital transformation is changing the DNA, the core, or even the processes of the organization. But within the construct of digital transformation, if we take one of the pivots, it's about connected devices, it's about Internet of Things coming together and being pivotal as part of the entire digital transformation value chain. Help us deconstruct, Sunil, and you've been, I'm sure, into conversations with multiple CXOs, multiple CIOs, and CTOs. How do they view digital transformation today? And what's the role IoT plays over there as part of the overall digital transformation for the enterprises?
Sure, Samir. So, as you rightly said, digital transformation today is not just a nice to have, but it is a strategic necessity. And I think what has clearly emerged from the COVID situation is that those enterprises who were fairly mature in their digital transformation journey have been less impacted because of the pandemic. And those who haven't even started or very early in their journey have been very, very badly impacted. I think that has clearly come out of this current situation. Now, IoT is definitely a very integral part of this whole digital transformation solution, right? Because IoT combined with AI, machine learning, blockchain, AR, VR, all of them are various building blocks when you talk about building a digital transformation solution, right? And IoT is the fundamental building block, I mean, because it all starts with acquisition of data, right? So what is IoT? IoT is trying to get data from a physical asset, right? It could be a machine, it could be a car, it could be a pallet, it could be a box. Any physical asset, you're trying to get data from that asset, right? So it all starts with data acquisition. And the most difficult thing to do is trying to get data from a physical asset, especially if you just look at manufacturing. A lot of the machines that are there on the shop floor are very, very old machines. Getting data from them is really a very, very difficult task. And hence, you need to build the right IoT device to be able to extract data. And not just machines, but any asset. It all starts with building the right IoT device, right? It all starts with that. And hence, you need to engineer the device for a particular use case. Because in IoT, it's never going to be one size fits all. Every use case is unique, right? So you got to build a device. So you have to have the right set of sensors for it to start with, depending on the use case. If you want to measure temperature, you need to have a temperature sensor. If you want to measure light, you need to have the light sensor. So the right sensors. Second important thing is you need to have the device with the battery life optimized, because most of these IoT devices are in very remote places, right? So the battery life has to be very low, it should last 1 year, 2 years, because you can't keep recharging batteries. So you need to optimize the battery life, and that actually depends on the kind of network that you're going to use, right? So that's the third element. So you have the sensors, you got the battery, and then you got to have the right network module. Because if you're talking about IoT, you got to make sure that you have the right network that you need for that particular use case, right? So there are various options today for connectivity, right? You have cellular, you have Wi-Fi, you have wired, you have satellite. So there are multiple options. And depending on that specific use case, you got to select the right network module. So and by and large today, Samir, most use cases, most of them, I would say more than 60 to 70% are IoT devices which has a cellular module. And that is understandable because purely because of coverage, because many of the assets are in remote places. A lot of the assets are in motion, right? So you have vehicles moving from one point to the other. The assets are going from one place to the other. So cellular becomes the best choice. And cellular are also, you get that carrier grade security, the standard that we've evolved over a long time. So a lot of the use cases are using cellular, right? So of course there are use cases where you could use satellite as well, especially there are use cases where when you have a ship which is going on the ocean, then you use satellite becomes the only choice, right? So selecting the right network, that again very, very important. The other important dimension, Samir, is the security of the device. And unfortunately in India, the hardware manufacturers, while they want to get the cost of the device really low, at times they might compromise on security. And I think that is something which they need to address. Security should be, at the fulcrum of the design. You got to have security by design, as they call it. Security by design principle. You need to make sure that the device is secure. And then your certification of device. And I think this is also very, very important. Like how you have medical devices which go through a very stringent certification process. Your IoT devices also has to go through a certification process. And in India, I think there are steps taken. In fact, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India have mandated, in fact, it's a guideline, it's not mandated yet, it's not a policy yet, but there's a guideline saying that any IoT device which is connecting to an asset has to be certified, and there are bodies with certified devices. So I think that's very, very important. So it all starts with the IoT device, make sure that you engineer it properly, select the right type of network, Then, of course, you send it to the cloud platform, and then you get your data there, and that's where all your magic happens in terms of getting those insights and all that stuff. Right? So IoT, very, very important. Any industry that you take, whether it's manufacturing, smart cities, it all starts with the IoT device, and you need to make sure that you have the right hardware for that particular use case, Samir. So IoT definitely very, very important, along with the other components. But it all starts with IoT. Yeah.
Sure. No, I think that that's a good foundational base you've established in terms of how the whole mechanics and how the whole configuration of IoT works. Just stretching on that point, I want to take your opinion about this whole aspect about how decision making for the CXOs using IoT happens. I mean, the data is getting streamed and there are a set of, I would say, measuring kind of, let's say, parameters. But if there are CXOs over there who are trying to kind of understand the whole aspect of decision making, what they need to kind of take on a daily or a kind of a, let's say, periodic basis, how this whole influencing happens in terms of those devices or instruments streaming data and more like a kind of a, let's say, a dashboard or a KPI coming to them. Can you please explain on that as well?
Sure, Samir. So before you deploy IoT, I think the first thing is you need to identify what problem are you trying to solve, right? Because you need to deploy technology to solve a business problem, right? So one is you try to solve that business problem, identify what the problem is. Secondly, I think as you mentioned KPIs, you got to clearly measure what is the KPI that you want to achieve from that. For example, in a manufacturing environment, if you take a machine and say you have a certain amount of cost that you're paying for maintenance of that machine, right? Now, if you really want to reduce, say, maintenance cost of that machine, your KPI is clearly defined, right? You want to reduce your cost is today, say 1 lakh. I want to reduce it by 20%. Then the question next is, what are you going to do to reduce the maintenance cost? So the next step obviously would be to monitor that machine, extract data from that in terms of its health, vibration, temperature, etc. Various parameters of that, right? So if you just take in context of, say, a machine, then you would probably find the factory head who would probably be responsible. That is because he's responsible to make sure that the production lines are all running well. There is no machine downtime, because machine downtime would mean, again, loss of revenue, loss of productivity, obviously. So it all depends on the use case. So for a factory environment, the operations head, the plant head would become the key guy. So you probably have to talk to him and to figure out what his issue is, find out what his KPIs are, what are the challenges he's facing, and then it starts from there, Samir. So similarly, if you look at supply chain, so example, if your supply chain could be both from an inbound perspective, your raw material coming into the factory, you obviously want to get a visibility of your supply chain. It comes into your factory, you want to make sure your inventory is correctly monitored, and then you make your products, and then the finished good goes out, right? Now, you'll be surprised, Samir, India, there is an index called the Logistics Performance Index. And that Logistics Performance Index is a measure of what is India's logistics cost. India is number 44 in that. There are so many other countries who are far, far better in terms of how they manage their logistics. And today, logistics constitute almost 14%. The logistics cost is almost 14% of GDP. It's very, very expensive as compared to other countries, right? And because of that, it impacts our competitiveness in terms of our manufacturing products. Now, how do you reduce that? So if you're just coming back to supply chain, if you're talking about supply chain, you want to reduce your, you want to improve visibility, because then you can plan your production better. So if you're talking about a supply chain use case, then you obviously have to talk to a supply chain head, right? So, I think almost every organization, whether it is in manufacturing, retail, would have someone responsible for supply chain. So you talk to the supply chain head, right? So it all depends.
I just want to chime in, Sunil, and you've touched a point, but what struck me when you said about this use case identification.
Correct.
Now, that is a very critical part in terms of shaping up for an organization how their digital transformation journey will actually perform or will actually be kind of a benchmark. How does, in your opinion, this whole problem identification or use cases identification happen? Does the team of CXOs come together, or it's a call of the operation or a logistic or a supply chain head? And what goes in terms of making of these use cases? Are these randomly picked up? What's the kind of mechanics behind that? If you can please explain that.
Right, Samir. So it's always going to be a top-down approach, Samir. So you got to go to the CEO first, because IoT decisions are not taken by the CIOs or the IT heads. They are important because there is always integration with your applications, which are needed. But it all starts with the the CEO. If you're able to reach the CEO first, then it becomes far more easier. And I think today, Samir, the biggest challenge India faces is a lack of awareness. In fact, there was a study done by a management consulting firm in terms of how, and this was mainly done for manufacturing. And why are manufacturing companies slow in adopting IoT? And one of the top reasons being that lack of awareness. So they're not aware of what is happening. They are not aware of the fact that there are lots of solutions available in the market which can solve those problems. So lack of awareness is one, and the culture is also one other factor, Samir. So it's very important that you start with the CEO, and once you are able to convince the CEO about what are the options available, and then it becomes easier for him then to get in all the other CXOs on board. And then it gives you that opportunity to interact with them, and then you sit with them, understand what are the challenges, and then you go about trying to architect a solution that will meet those challenges, Samir. So I think it has to always be a top-down approach when you talk about engaging with any enterprise, Samir, in my view.
Sure,
And that's
sure.
been our approach always, yeah.
Sure, sure. Now, I think the phase one of our conversation, if I understand, I think you've set the agenda right in terms of really putting this digital transformation and the role of IoT over there. And I want to move to the next segment, Sunil, and take the views about applications, the use cases of IoT, because I think I realize by virtue of talking to some of the senior leaders and folks that seemingly there is a lot of inadequate understanding about what IoT brings to the table, specifically on the value addition, the potential in terms of the growth and scale. So, help us kind of pick up some of the use cases or application areas you've been exposed to, or even kind of what you've picked up from the market, given you have an extensive outreach, and help us also demystify how IoT has been a kind of a, let's say, force propellant in terms of solving those problems and bringing a lot of those strategic kind of perspective into the open.
So, Samir, I can talk about use cases till the cows come home, because there are so many use cases that I can talk about, but I'll just.
Which is what we want actually, because we haven't covered any IoT specific theme in our, and nothing better like getting an expert like you to kind of talk about this.
Okay, so Samir, I'll pick a few of them and I'll touch upon three or four industries, and I'll
And if
be.
you go to viewing, you can take some different industries, Sunil, for our views.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll pick three or four use cases from three or four different types of industries, Samir.
Okay.
And I'll probably start with the agriculture, because agriculture contributes almost like 17-18% to India's GDP. More than 50% of our workforce works in agriculture. And I'll start with a very interesting use case, Samir. And this is it's happened about 3 years back. And this happened in a district in Andhra Pradesh, in Kurnool district. And this is a project with Microsoft actually worked on with ICRISAT. ICRISAT is, they do a lot of research in the agriculture space in Hyderabad. And, right. And so the use case was, there were certain, for example, groundnut, cotton, and another crop. These three crops, the sowing the seed at the right time is very, very important, especially these three crops. And what Microsoft was trying to do is use the power of IoT and AI to help farmers get the right inputs, especially in terms of timing or when to actually sow the seed. Okay, it's a very elaborate use case, but I'll try to be as simple as possible and as quick as possible. So what they did is, Samir, they've identified about 30 different farmers to find out, and told them that, okay, you work with us and we'll try to help you improve your yield for those particular crops, groundnut, cotton, and sugarcane. Okay. And then what they did is they attached sensors to the soil and they got a lot of information in terms of the nutrient value of the soil, moisture content, all that stuff. And what they also did is they got a lot of historical data, temperature, what was the weather condition of the last so many years, soil conditions. So they got a lot of that data, and then they were able to use AI and machine learning, and came back to the farmers with input saying that okay, based on all the analysis that we have done, this will be the right time for you guys to sow the seed. And those farmers who actually sowed the seed in the right time, they got a 30% increase in yield, Samir. 30% increase in yield. So that's a great example of how you could leverage a combination IoT plus AI to be able to give the right input to the farmers, because at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to improve farm incomes, right? And this is a great use case where the yield improved, and that means more income for the farmer. And in fact, even on Sunday, the Economic Times had in fact, it had 2 pages just about smart agriculture. How farmers are now taking data-driven decisions. Attached, water optimization. I'll again quickly take another use case, and this is something that we did in the US and which can be replicated in India. Now, paddy cultivation, Samir. In paddy cultivation, you use a lot of water. You got to maintain 4 inches of water on a paddy field, and you always have to do that. And because you're having a lot of water, it generates what is called as an anaerobic condition. It generates a lot of methane, right? So the problems are, one is you're using a lot of water. Secondly, it is also having the environment, because a lot of methane getting generated. So we worked with a company called Precision King, and we built a solution where we attach sensors to the soil, to the fields, and we're able to optimize use of water. So you don't actually always need to maintain 4 inches of water on the field. There are periods when you can actually have dryness. So it's called alternate wetting and drying. There are periods when it's wet, some periods when it's dry. When it's getting dry, then what you do is you have pumps which are IoT enabled, and then you trigger an alert to the pump to pump, so that water then gets released. And that way, what happens is the water utilization was optimized. You use less water, and because pump usage also was lower, it saved on electricity cost. And because you're using less of water, the amount of methane that got generated was also reduced. So in one solution, we could address all of these problems, right? So especially given that sustainability is a very, very important dimension today. Most companies are looking at that very seriously. In fact, all of them have the sustainability goals also, including us. I think this is a very good example of how you could use IoT to be able to solve this problem. Quickly coming to manufacturing. In manufacturing, lots of use cases, Samir. It all starts with condition monitoring of your machines, because machine downtime obviously means loss of revenue, right? So simple things like connecting IoT devices to machines, measuring the temperature, pressure, vibration, because you want to predict when a machine can fail, right? So and that starts with collecting the data, and then once you get it, you start with monitoring it, and then once you get a lot of data, you have a lot of history about that machine. You get a lot of contextual information. When was that machine bought? What are the weather conditions in which they operate? All that stuff. And at some point in time, you'll be able to get, again, by using AI and machine learning, you'll be able to, at some point in time, predict when a machine can fail, right? So a lot of use cases in India are using predictive maintenance, right? And what is also important is, how do you integrate with your backend? Because it's just not enough when you say that, okay, my machine is going to fail, say, tomorrow. What is the action that you're going to take, right? It has to connect to your backend, SAP or an ERP system, and trigger a work order so that, the guy who supplied that part or the machine itself is able to go and do the replacement, right? So it all has to work, in sync. Then I'll give you an example of retail, and I can't name this client, but it's one of India's largest online grocery companies, and they take food and fruits from the farm to the retail stores. And one challenge that they were facing is, and because a lot of these fruits and some of these vegetables have to be in a temperature and they are very temperature and humidity sensitive. Any slight variation in temperature, they get rotten. So what they were doing is, all these fruits and these vegetables were kept in cooling boxes. Some are in refrigerated containers, and they were moving from one place to the other. And what was happening is, many of the people who are in delivery were not following what is called standard operating procedures. They were not handling the coolant properly. They're opening the box and doing all that stuff. So what they did is, they added barcoding, they added IoT gateways, which will measure from the time that, the pallet or the box or the cooling box which is carrying these vegetables, from the time it is sent from the farm or from the nearest warehouse to the retail, they're able to track it real time. And there were also temperature sensors attached. So in case there's a slight variation in temperature, they could take an action, maybe add a little more coolant, or maybe adjust the packing in such a way so that, the temperature is at an optimal level. And that way they were able to save a lot on cost, Samir. So a great example of a use case in supply chain visibility, cold chain, where you could monitor the cold chain in real time. In fact, this will be useful even for farmers, because a lot of the food that gets wasted is because they don't have sufficient cold chain infrastructure. and IoT will definitely play a part in that. I can also give you an example of, in a smart city use case, and I was involved in that project. A lot of the transformers today are not connected today, especially on the distribution side, right? So, which are the ones which are closest to where your homes are, right? Now, many of the power cuts happen because these transformers are not properly maintained, right? And we actually worked with a partner where they built an IoT device which will measure the temperature of the transformer in real time. The oil inside the transformer also has to be monitored, because if the temperature of the oil goes up, it might impact the performance of the transformer. Earthing also has to be measured frequently. If the earthing is bad, then that might cause the transformer to blow up. So they actually built a device which will connect to that, and in real time we could get real time information on the temperature. Monitor the fuse in real time. Sometimes the fuse goes bad, that again can trigger an outage. So again, a great example where using the power of IoT, we are able to monitor temperatures in real time. Another example I can give you, again talking about grid, smart meters, Samir. So smart meters, there is an initiative called the Smart Meters National Program. It's a government initiative. And what they've done is they've constituted one body called Energy Efficiency Services Limited, EESL. It's a government body, which is a joint venture of 3 different power companies, Power Grid and a couple of others. Now, this initiative is to replace, in India, there are more than 25 million conventional meters. Now, even I have a conventional meter at home. Somebody has to come, take a meter reading, make a reading of the usage, and then you get an alert and you've got to make the payment. Now, what they are doing is, in fact, many states have implemented it. They are replacing conventional meters with smart meters. So what happens is, in a smart meter, you have a SIM inside, and it is able to measure real time of your consumption of electricity within your home. So you really don't need to have someone come to your home and make a reading, because there's always a possibility that there might be errors, right? You might not enter the amount correctly. The number of units that you consumed, you may not enter it correctly. So it solves that problem. And because you're able to get that real-time information, and you also get real-time alerts about your consumption, so you know exactly that, okay, I'm consuming perhaps more because AC is on for 8 hours or 10 hours or something like that. And then you can regulate the use of maybe the AC and all that stuff. So the smart meters actually is going to pick up in a big way. In fact, COVID got very badly impacted, Samir, because many of the guys who actually go to homes were not going because of the lockdown situation. And in fact, in Hyderabad, we had a situation where the government actually looked at last year's average 3 months to arrive at your bill, because they are not able to send the guy to the home to get your meter reading, right? So the smart meter could have solved that problem, right? So that's on smart meters. Connected cars, Samir, Honda City just launched. In fact, the connected cars has been in India. We are not seeing too much of adoption, but we have telematic devices now connected with cellular SIMs inside it, connecting to the car, and you're able to get real-time information about the health of the car, the engine performance, battery management, tire pressure. In case you are in distress, it can automatically generate and call to the nearest emergency center. And then, as a consumer, you have an app through which you get all alerts in terms of how your car is performing. And there are 50 different attributes of your car. Some of the key attributes, you get all those alerts, and you know exactly when to take your car for servicing, because typically you do it once in 6 months, once in 9 months. But now you do it only when you need to, right? So, and connected car will probably see a lot more adoption going forward, Samir. So, I mean, I can go on and on, but broadly, these are
I think that's a fascinating set of use cases, applications, and example you gave, Sunil. And that also kind of showcases, which for majority of our participants, they may not be aware that the use cases run agnostic of industries, because you covered almost about 6, 7 in your narrative. And also there is a great deal of what I call a positive benefit, which accrues back in terms of how IoT works, and the application areas provide that kind of a growth and scale opportunity for the enterprises or for the larger well-being of the citizen as well. So then one industry...
Sorry, Samir, before you go to the next question, very quickly, while the use cases that I shared, they're all to do with clear business metrics, right? You either reduce cost or maybe improve revenues. There's one use case that I very briefly want to touch upon, and that relates to employee safety. And especially from a COVID perspective, I think it's important for me to share this, Samir. And that's this whole smart detection, right? Because now people are going back to the offices. And what companies are trying to do is have CCTV cameras, because even a camera is a video sensor. So what they're trying to do is now you have CCTV camera feeds going to a video server. They're able to monitor whether people are maintaining social distancing. You could have thermal scanners which are IoT enabled. You have IR using infrared. You can measure temperature of people. And then you have companies who, in fact, a lot of the startups have come up with solutions which are, small, smart badge, which is a Bluetooth enabled. So, and it's got Bluetooth gateways. So in case someone is not adhering to social distancing, you get those alerts. It buzzes actually, you get a buzz, and the stakeholder knows that somebody is not adhering to those guidelines. And you can use the camera analytics to take decisions. So example, if you constantly see people grouping around together, not maintaining that, then you can probably have their manager being reported to and tell him that, hey, you have folks who are not adhering to the social distancing norm. So I think from an employee safety perspective, I think we started to see a lot more companies now starting to use this. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought it will be important to share this particular use case also.
No, that's interesting. In fact, and good to know about that facet also of employee safety and all. One of the use case I want you to touch upon, Sunil, is also specific to your industry, telecom. Help us explain what IoT is trying to do over there in telecom industry. I mean, the cell tower kind of, let's say, transmission data or the usage over there. Please throw some light in terms of what applications in telecom are happening through IoT.
Sure, Samir, there are quite a lot of them. I'll probably stick to 2 or 3. One is in the area of monitoring of cell towers. Now, many of the cell towers which are located in many remote parts of India. In fact, we don't have cellular service in India, but I can briefly share what we have done in the US, which is definitely replicable in India, and there are operators in India also using it. So what we do is, for example, many of the cell towers which are deployed, we actually use drones with high resolution cameras, which are actually capturing video feeds on the towers, especially when you want to maintain towers, right? So you're actually getting video analytics, and that is actually helping you in terms of maintenance. So, and if you run into any problem, with the towers, you know exactly what the problem is because you have those video analytics, and you can actually reduce your maintenance cost. Secondly, you're also having a lot of diesel generators which are being used, so you can actually use IoT to monitor those diesel generators, right? Some of them again are very in remote locations. So you can actually monitor that in real time and diagnose what the issue is and remotely troubleshoot, right? So that's another use case. Second, the other area is in the area of fleet management. Now we have a lot of these technicians who go from one place to the other, deploying devices, laying fiber, and all that. And we have about 75,000 odd vehicles going from one part of US to the other. And typical fleet management use case, Samir, where we monitor the driver behavior. You do route optimization so that if he's going from point A to point B, he can take the shortest possible route. So that way he's able to conserve energy, fuel, right? And then if the vehicle is idling, you get those alerts. So the telematic device connecting to that vehicle will give us all that information, right? So fleet management, great use case where you can actually save on cost. That's another use case within. And then again, another use case is, in fact, we are using blockchain actually, Samir, for supply chain visibility. So along with, in fact, many operators, along with mobile service, many of them also bundle the handset along with the service, right? So they give you a bundle, right? You get the handset. Maybe in India, you have the choice where you can buy the handset separately, but there are countries where you get operators giving you that whole thing. And many times what happens is there is the challenge where they're not able to monitor, or they're actually losing visibility of where the handsets are. Once they place the order on the manufacturer, till the time it reaches the retail outlet, sometimes you find phones getting lost, or there's no visibility on it. So they're actually built a solution. Of course, you need to have barcoding, IoT, and all that, coupled with blockchain for traceability, so that you know exactly where it is. And so that's again another use case where for telecom operators, you could use supply chain visibility solutions and using IoT for that. So that's another use case. And Samir, last thing is in the area of security, Samir. And there, because if you just look at the network, humongous amount of traffic going on the internet, right? And telecom operators are not just managing their own traffic, monitoring traffic going on the client networks. So there's a need to make sure that they are able to secure all the traffic, right? Most of them have created huge backbones, a lot of traffic going on it. and with the security threats that we're seeing now, it becomes very, very important to monitor and be able to respond to those threats and mitigate those threats. So you have operators who are actually using AI and machine learning. So what they do is they collect all the data which is going on the internet. They correlate it with a lot of data sources, and once they do that correlation, in fact, we use a Hadoop-based framework on which we created a data lake, and we are using AI and machine learning. And after doing that correlation, we are able to identify patterns. And once you know what those patterns are, because straight away you won't find a cyber attack, right? There are certain events which lead to a thing happening, right? So you see a pattern, right? And then after that, you know that there's something which is likely to happen. So again, operators use that to be able to inform customers that there could be a potential threat, and this is what you should be doing to mitigate that threat, right? So AI and machine learning widely deployed today among operators, especially when from a security perspective, Samir. So I can go on and on, but these are broadly the use cases for emerging technologies among telecom operators.
Oh, that's awesome, Sunil. And pardon me, there is a lot of downpour happening, so you may hear some background thundering and lightning and all, but that's part of our, I would say, nature. Uh, so I think two things really kind of stuck me. One, this proliferation of IoT goes far and beyond in terms of industries which what you said and while covering 6 7 industry. I think one, it's agnostic of the industry. Second, it goes deep. I mean, the use cases of IoT goes deep. And not only, I think there is a great understanding in terms of the applications, what you talked about, but there is a lot of that decision making which happens when IoT starts working like a magic, as you said, kind of a thing, because data devices talk to each other, which makes a meaning in terms of AI and IoT coming together. And that's where the stakeholders or the decision maker can take a decision in terms of how to go about kind of taking those decisions basis that particular data. So great set of, I would say, examples what you provided, Sunil. One thing which I want to peel as part of the discussion is about connected cars. And I think that's also a question we had from one of the participants earlier, and I'm trying to blend. It's been talked about for quite some time that connected cars, and I also remember a consortium of some of the large automobile manufacturers came together a few years back, and everyone said, okay, just like a smartphone, let's make a smart car. The decision making, not in terms of the distance or where to travel, but different applications in terms of maybe restaurants talking to a car in terms of giving you those discount coupons as you go along, kind of a thing. Help us explain, one, to what extent this connected car as a kind of a concept has taken shape, and what you could foresee coming as part of automobile manufacturers kind of really harping more upon or harnessing the power of IoT to kind of make this particular industry more, I would say, agile, because today it's very latent, it's very kind of, let's say, subdued, but maybe IoT could be the magic which could actually bolster this industry. So please help us explain on this.
Right. So Samir, connected car India, unfortunately, adoption has been low, and I think with the cost of devices getting cheaper, and the cost of connectivity also coming down, we'll probably see adoption picking up. Maybe not in the next 6 months, but maybe later. But when you talk about connected car, while I elaborated earlier on the benefits that you get, right? One is you are able to real time monitor the performance of the car and get those alerts, makes it convenient for you. There are other use cases as well, Samir, and one use case which I can share. But in India, it depends on how regulations handle this, especially insurance. With this whole concept of usage-based insurance, Samir. So where your driving behavior will determine the premium that you're going to pay. And we are seeing that in the West, where if your driving behavior is monitored, and if you're someone who drives well, which means that you're accelerating properly, you're not braking too hard, and all that stuff, your driving behavior is monitored. And if your driving behavior is meeting a particular level, and which means that you're qualified as a safe driver, you actually pay lower insurance. And somebody who doesn't drive well will probably pay a higher insurance. So we're going to see the insurance companies also playing in that ecosystem, right? So we're already seeing insurance play out in cars because you obviously need an insurance for when you buy a vehicle. But we're going to see an insurance player also getting involved from this perspective. And I think we need to have regulations around that. The other thing that you told me is that you mentioned is about this whole other ecosystem, right? For example, as you're driving down a highway and you're passing through a restaurant, and imagine if you get an alert saying that, hey, there's a 30% discount in case you go and eat there, a buffet. So you're getting that food tech ecosystem also, part of that. So it's actually happening in the West. It is happening in the West. In fact, I have a nice connected car video which I can probably share with you later. We envisioned this scenario 4 or 5 years back when we talked about connected car vision, where I talked about a restaurant scenario in case you're passing through a street and you have a large retail outlet close by, and then you got those alerts saying that, hey, if you go inside, you'll probably get a 30% discount if you buy so and so thing, right? So you're going to get the retail ecosystem part of that, right? So I think at the end of the day, Samir, it's all about that ecosystem, Samir. The OEM working together with all the others, so that's how you want to monetize. Because again, there's that whole thing about who owns the data of the client. The OEM would say that I own the customer data, right? Whereas the guy who's providing the telematics device might probably say that I'm giving the device, so I own the data. So that debate is still on. But then I think it's important that the whole ecosystem has to get together. I think at the end of the day, Samir, it's going to be an ecosystem versus an ecosystem play, platform versus platform. And I think the real benefit of a connected car would come when you get all those players together. And then that's when you can monetize the data, and that's when organization can get the benefit of it. And as the consumer, you get the convenience and you get the best possible deals, whatever possible, right? So, but India will probably take a little longer, Samir, in terms of connected car adoption. Yeah.
No, I think some of these use cases, what you gave about connected cars, specifically what's happening in the West and other countries, I think it's a matter of time. I think it would translate to something happening in India as well. But I think very well noted in terms of what you rightly said, that essentially it's about the ecosystem creation, because just one player or one segment cannot create enough opportunity. So they need to either leverage or also kind of, let's say, optimize the ecosystem as well. Great. So I think that's a good dimension what you touch. One of the other thing I want to touch, Sunil, and also I think one of the participants gave one of the perspective which I saw that was this 5G thing. I mean, it's today become, I would say, headlines every day. I pick up a newspaper, I'm sure you've also seen, either in the snippets or somewhere, a 5G discussion is underway. It's there. But also, outside of course, the geopolitical overtures or whatever rhetoric is happening, there is a great deal of intrigue and aura about what 5G and IoT can together do combined. Help us shed some light and your viewpoints whenever it comes in. And I'm talking specifically about India. What change you would envisage as part of industries harnessing the power of IoT, which is already there, 5G combined? So please give your perspective.
Yeah, sure, Samir. So if you look at the earlier technology, Samir, right, from 2G to 3G to 4G, they were all about higher speeds, right? As you transition from one generation to the next, it's about faster speeds, right? 4G, you're getting a faster speed compared to 3G. Now, 5G is just not about faster speeds. 5G is all about a new experience. And the whole architecture of 5G, when you talk about 5G, it's low latency and very high bandwidth. Those are the two important characteristics of 5G. Extremely low latency, somewhere anywhere between 2 to 10 millisecond kind of a latency, very, very low latency. And you're talking about speeds anywhere between 1 Gbps to 10 Gbps, Samir. Very high speed. And when you look at 5G, you can broadly classify them into 3 different use cases very quickly. First thing is, it's called mobile broadband or fixed wireless access. Now, enhanced mobile broadband. And that is for the consumer side. So today we are using 4G handsets. When you actually use 5G at some, maybe a year or 2 years from now, the 5G modem that you're going to have in your handset, today if a high definition movie takes, say, 5 minutes to download, with 5G, you will probably be able to download in less than 10 seconds. So the speeds are going to be phenomenal. Secondly, fixed wireless access. Now, today, most enterprises today have fiber to the nearest exchange. It's all fiber, or they might probably be using radio frequency. Now, for internet access. Now, 5G can either replace that, or it can complement what they already have. With 5G, you're going to get faster speed, as I mentioned. So 5G can be deployed for enterprises wanting to use it for internet access, so fixed wireless access, right? So it's wireless access. Instead of using fiber, you can use 5G. That's one set. And from a consumer standpoint, also, when you're talking about enhanced mobile broadband, your cloud gaming, with such low latency, your whole, you could have you can have ultra high definition content, and so that whole experience for the consumer is going to get completely changed, right? So one is on the consumer side. If you just look at the enterprise side, the other set of use cases is what is called ultra low latency communication. So there are applications which require very, very low latency, especially remote surgery. In fact, last year, Samir, the first ever remote surgery was done on a 5G network in China. So there was a guy in China, in one particular district. He had Alzheimer's, and the surgeon wasn't there in the hospital to do the surgery. And in fact, you can check this on the internet also. So very well publicized use case. But, the surgeon was actually in a remote location, and using a 5G network, he was actually able to instruct the surgeons to do that surgery. First ever remote surgery done on 5G, and that possible because very, very low latency, very, very high speed, right? So ultra low latency and reliable communication. And the third set of use cases, and this is where IoT will play a big part, and that's called massive machine type communication, MMTC. So this is where you're going to have a lot of capacity. So in a 1 square kilometer radius, you can have about 1 million IoT devices all connected to the 5G network. And that will really trigger a significant boom in terms of IoT adoption, Samir, because with such massive capacities in a small area, you can have so many of those devices connected. That will be a real trigger for 5G adoption. So I think, and there are lots of use cases. 5G manufacturing, for example, you could have, your AGVs, automated guided vehicles, which motion controlled, all remotely operated. Your robots could be remotely operated using 5G. Even things like augmented reality. So someone in the manufacturing use case, someone goes to a place and needs to repair something very complex, and he's struggling with it, and he can get over the shoulder instructions using 5G. He can actually get the help of a specialist, and you can have digital instructions superimposed on your real environment, and he actually help in troubleshooting, right? And that will be possible on a 5G network, right? So you're going to have use cases in smart manufacturing, smart cities. I think a lot of use cases, especially video surveillance. Your resolution of video will be much better. You can transmit it at faster rates. So you're going to see a lot of 5G deployment, especially in smart city use cases, especially around surveillance and all that stuff, right? So 5G we're going to see a lot more adoption in enterprises, Samir, while there are use cases for consumer. But from an enterprise adoption standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot more. And from an India standpoint, Samir, to be honest, I think we are about 18 to 24 months away, because it's just not the operator readiness, right? So operators obviously need spectrum. They need to set up that infrastructure, but the whole ecosystem has to come together, right? You've got to have affordable handsets. The devices have to be cost effective. And most importantly, Samir, you got to have enough 5G use cases. Of course, that will evolve over a period of time, but you got to have that whole ecosystem evolve. And once that happens, then you'll probably see a lot more 5G adoption happening in India, Samir.
No, I think you give a very interesting view, because this art of possible in terms of 5G really revolutionizing India's ability to kind of get to the hinterlands, remotest part, and second, usher a lot of these new use cases which we are struggling today, because you rightly said about this computer vision coming from the AI background. I know today many of these data sets, while using problems in computer vision, goes for an issue because the resolution is not clear. Yeah. And that means you have to train the machine using more images to get that real picture to build an algorithm. So great set of applications you gave. One question, Sunil, which is pertinent, and I want to take over there, which has come in, is about security. Now, this again is an issue which is global issue. Today, we are facing challenges across multiple geographies, really strengthening their security systems, ensuring there are no kind of a cyber espionage or any kind of issues. But when we talk about IoT, this streaming of data possibly also may result in the issue of data theft, data anomalies, or data kind of getting pilfered. What's your view over there? And since you are affiliated with a lot of industry consortia and bodies, what are the steps India is taking to ensure that, per se, when it comes to IoT applications, the data part is well secure?
Right. So Samir, when you talk about cybersecurity and more from an IoT standpoint, what is really needed is a very holistic approach. And here, what we need to do is adopt what is called as a defense in depth approach, which means that security has to be at multiple levels or multiple layers. So if you just look at IoT, it starts with the device, right? So your device has to be secured. So today, you could have a security chip in your device. You could have an encrypted SIM, so the data which is going out is encrypted, right? So I think the device is the weakest link in the chain, right? So if you're able to have a very secure device, then I think you kind of protect yourself from a lot of the vulnerabilities that are there. The second thing is securing the network. So as you send data through the network, your network has to be secure, right? So today you might be using a VPN to connect to your corporate net. So similarly, when you're talking about from a cellular standpoint, you can have an equivalent of a VPN. It's called an APN, an access point name, which can be used to route the data. So you can have IPsec tunnels running through that, so that you can have secure data going through the secure network. And then third thing is the application, the data, Samir, sitting on the cloud. So you obviously have to secure that. And there are various tools for that. You could have a network-based firewall instead of having a firewall on the premise. You could have a firewall on the cloud. You could use managed intrusion detection. And, so you got to, have multiple layers covered. So device, network, application, the data. If you're able to do that, and then you add the next element, which is threat intelligence, which I talked about, where you're able to get, if you have an attack, how do you detect it and how do you respond to that, right? So we're able to build enough intelligence, and that's where our AI and machine learning comes in. And I shared about how we have been using it. And if we're able to do that, then I think we can minimize risks, Samir. So in my view, I don't think anyone can claim that. It's all about trying to minimize the risk. And if you're able to minimize that risk and have the proper checks and balances, then I think you'll be fine. Now, coming to the question about there is a. Can you hear me, Samir?
Yes, there was a bit of glitch. It's fine.
Hello?
It's good.
Samir, can you hear me?
Sunil, please go ahead. I'm able to hear you.
Yeah, so yes, just so what is India doing? The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India a few years back came up with a guideline saying that every device that has to be made in India has to follow what is called security by design principle. So which means that it has to be architected keeping security in mind. It cannot be bolted on as an afterthought. It has to be architected keeping security in mind. And so security by design will be a must going forward. Strong certification processes will be there to be followed to make sure the device is secure. That is from a device standpoint. And of course, you have CERT. So you have your, if you have a problem, you can actually report to CERT. So from a government standpoint, I think there are some bodies that you can go to. But I think a lot more needs to be done, Samir, from a government standpoint. I think we are still seeing a lot of threats, and it's got increased, especially the threat vector has increased, widened over the last 3 months because of COVID. But a lot more needs to be done, Samir, from a security standpoint. And I think a lot more awareness needs to be built among enterprises, among people, to make sure they follow security hygiene. So you have personal hygiene, you have security hygiene, and that security hygiene applies to even individuals, it applies to companies as well. And I think the simplest thing which I want to share is password. Many people use the same password for multiple applications. I think it starts with making sure that you change your passwords frequently and you have really strong passwords, because many of the devices that have been compromised in the past are because of weak passwords. Simple password like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. You'll be surprised when you hear some of those challenges which happen in the past.
So we would have loved to go on, but we've hit time. But I must say, it's been a very fascinating, engaging, and absorbing conversation. First, I think you enabled demystification of what digital transformation today means in terms of applications of IoT over there and the relevance of IoT over there. Second, when we went to the use cases, I think the range and the breadth of use cases you covered was phenomenal. I mean, specifically, I think for me also, it was a revelation what's happening in terms of many of these IoT specific use cases really kind of not only changing the industry, but bringing a lot of benefits, tangible benefits for the larger well-being. And third, of course, these aspects about how connected cars, the introduction of 5G will really kind of put IoT in a different league altogether. Because I think at the end of the day, it's a strategic call for the CXOs to ensure that they kind of embed and infuse IoT as a part of their strategy when it comes to digital transformation. Thank you so much. It's a great session kind of a thing, but really appreciate you taking time. And thank you so much, all the participants.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for inviting me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.